What do surveillance data look like, and what does it mean to look at them? Governments and corporations watch what we do all of the time. Whether you're passing through a pandemic lockdown zone or going to the grocery store for food, everything that we do produces data. But how those data are interpreted and what they mean can be very different from one set of eyes to another. Whether a police department or an analytics company, those data can mean profit. They can mean entertainment opportunities. They can mean security insight, and so on. Institutions around us at all times are obsessed with our data, but no matter how they look at them differently, they all seem to subscribe to the same belief, that what they are looking at is evidence of who we are and who we're becoming. So what does it mean for us as citizens to look at our own surveillance data? What would it mean to us? And what might we learn about the people who are trying to interpret them?
Our phones are generating data all of the time. Location data is one of the types of data it generates all the time. And there's a few mechanisms in which you can access that data. One of the ways, and that's maybe one of the simplest ways to do it, your phone has a bit of a certain global variable, let's call it, or let's visualize it like that any application can access. And so your phone from time to time is updating that value and saying, oh, this is where this phone is located right now. And then an application can go ahead and grab it from there. And then, an application now knows where you are located. That's one of the mechanisms, but there's a few extra mechanisms. An application can actually request the phone to get a certain location measurement at a certain point in time. So that is the type of data and those different types of methods and ways of accessing data. That's exactly what we wanted to capture with this project.
To address some of these questions, we launched a project called Big Data Exposed. It was a data experiment, really, that brought social scientists and engineers together to build specialized software that would monitor how companies around the world were taking surveillance data from our smartphones in real time. And the data we decided to focus on were location data.
Let's draw a few paths throughout the city, and let's capture the data as we walk along or drive along.
We got these reverse engineered smartphones on the day that we all arrived in Kingston as a team, and we took them on different walking routes in different postal codes.
So we got an open source travel app, and we infected it with code that we know that many companies around the world use in order to take location data from apps. We took our infected device for a walk and a drive around Kingston, Ontario, Canada for a day, and we essentially watched them take location data from our device, and we documented everything that we saw.
So what's interesting about the BDE project, or that really fascinates me, is just how much we don't know, not only about how this data is collected on the phones, but how movement through space of different forms, whether you're walking or whether you're in a car, whether you're in an open field, whether you're in an urban environment, shapes the level of granularity of that data. And then also, hopefully, what we want to continue to discover is how it shapes the picture that's painted of the people who are being tracked. And that's why I think the experiment was so useful, or is yielding such interesting data.
I'm excited to see what our experiment is going to reveal. Our team has begun looking at the data, and new questions are surfacing all the time. For example, what stories are companies and governments exchanging with one another about how we move during a pandemic? What are they getting right, and what are they getting wrong? And when they do get it wrong, who's getting hurt the most? Is it everyday Canadians? Is it refugees, the homeless, or Indigenous peoples? We're also curious about whether or not the location data that we see in Google Maps is the same as what companies and governments are taking all the time. And perhaps the most exciting part about this project for me is that because we have so many interesting people working with us, engineers, geographers, political scientists, analytics people, they all bring to the table their own curiosities and questions.
There are consent forms that we sign, let's say the terms of service for Apple. No one's going to sit there reading through 70 to 80 pages of Apple literature. I'm just curious as to is it ethical to put this sort of data into the hands of companies who are able to promote and like drive their motives.
I don't think the general public really understand how the data has been collected. And also, I think from legal perspective, I don't think we have very clear definition or have a clear the law to guide the big company to use the data, and also to help the general public to understand how our data had been used. What's our right as individual right regarding the data has been collected on us.
Whether you're a student, a civil society advocate, an educator, or even just a smartphone owner, we're hoping that this experiment will allow us to demystify some hidden processes for you and maybe position you to really start wondering and investigating what happens when you look at and work with surveillance data.
There is a huge need for us to work together in a multidisciplinary way in the university context, in the research context, so that we can really understand what the other is saying. And there has for a long time been a gap here that people have not filled with conversations that are mutually enlightening about what the other is doing. So in other words, people in the data sciences frequently have very little idea about the consequences of the work that they are engaged in. They may provide very elegant algorithms. They may set up new systems that are very efficient, but they don't necessarily know about where those are going to be used or how they're going to be used, and still less who it is going to be, who it will affect. So that's one aspect of it. And the other is the other way around, that those in the social sciences would do well to know more about what's going on in computing and software development in the data sciences. And so we don't fully understand from a social science point of view what is happening until we've got some clues about how those data are, well, how they exist in the first place, how they might be collected, analyzed, and used. We get very interested in the ways, the social implications of these, but we need to know what is happening with the data themselves and how algorithms work. That conversation is a critical one in this field.